When I heard The Witcher 3 was coming to Switch, I wasn't sure how it could be possible. We've seen impossible ports on Switch before, like Doom and Wolfenstein, but The Witcher still seemed out of reach. Unlike Doom, this is a huge open-world game. I received a review copy of Witcher 3 just a few days before recording this video, so I'll be focusing mostly on how well the game holds up on the Switch. This is the full Witcher 3 experience, however, with everything intact, including both DLC expansions. Every inch of the Northern Realms is present and accounted for. Each NPC is in its place, every cutscene is present in its full glory. That alone is an impressive feat. And what's even more surprising is the fact that Panic Button, the wizards responsible for the aforementioned Doom and Wolfenstein ports, have nothing to do with it. Witcher 3 was ported to Switch by Saber Interactive, the developers behind the ill-fated NBA Playground series and Shaq Fu. Initially finding out they were handling the porting duties had me worried, but they've done some impressive work. Let's get the obvious out of the way first though. The Witcher 3 on Switch doesn't look as good as it does on competing platforms. That isn't to say it's unimpressive though, it's actually very, very pretty, especially in cutscenes. Hair still flows and reacts the way it does on more powerful consoles, little details in Geralt's armor are visible despite the lower resolution, and lighting looks absolutely incredible. Outside of cutscenes, the downgrades made to get Witcher running on the Switch become more noticeable, especially if you're playing in docked mode. The first and most noticeable compromise for me was the resolution, which seems to hover around the 540p mark. When running around the world, at times Geralt would appear fuzzy or blurry, which is typical of games that push the Switch hard, like Xenoblade Chronicles 2. The frame rate seems to hover around 20 to 25 frames per second as well, even in densely populated areas like Novigrad, which is a significant difference from the locked 60 you'll find elsewhere, but this is pretty much what I expected from such an ambitious port, and the more I played the game, the less I noticed these compromises, and when playing in handheld mode, these changes became difficult to spot. Handheld mode is the way to play Witcher 3. The frame rate suffers a bit less, and the game looks breathtaking on the Switch's smaller screen. The UI and text are easy to read too, which is great considering the game was known for having issues with readability when it released back in 2015. Unfortunately, there are no Switch-specific features added to this version of The Witcher 3. No gyro aiming, no NFC functionality, nothing. And given what is here, I'm okay with that. I've spent a lot of time talking about the technical aspects of this version, but if you're a Nintendo-only fan, you probably aren't too familiar with The Witcher 3, as this is its first outing on a Nintendo platform. As I mentioned before, it's an open-world game. This is a game that offers hundreds of hours of playtime. Between the main story and both DLCs, you can expect over 100 hours of gameplay, and that isn't counting the numerous side quests. Everywhere you turn in The Witcher 3, there's something to do. A werewolf that needs killing, a griffin hunting civilians, or a potion that needs mixing to save someone. Just walking across the world map can take up to 2 hours by some estimates. It's an insane amount of content for a game on any platform, let alone a portable one. Thankfully, there are signposts scattered throughout the world that will allow you to fast travel. I was very thankful for these, especially midway through the game when I would find myself having to take on objectives that would have me crossing continents. The main quest of the game, at least early on, is to locate Ciri, who serves as a daughter figure in Geralt's life. To find her though, you need help from characters all over the world. At certain points in the quest, you also take control of Ciri, who is now a grown woman and has some unique combat skills all her own. Combat, however, is probably The Witcher 3's weak point. While it's fun in its own way, it feels ever so slightly off. This isn't a Switch-specific issue either. Combat has always been a bit wonky in every version of Witcher 3 to date. I feel a slight delay between button presses and on-screen action, and hits lack a sense of impact. That said, neither of these issues got in the way of my enjoyment when I played the game back in 2015, and they still don't today. The Witcher 3's battles are at their best when you're up against a huge creature. Fights against humans are easy, but monsters are another story entirely. If you want to survive an encounter with a werewolf, for instance, you'll need to research it. You'll need to find an herb called Wolfsbane and create an oil with it to add to your silver sword if you want to do any meaningful damage. Fights aren't the only part of the game that requires careful consideration either. Conversations are a huge mechanic in this game. Depending on the path you choose in a conversation, you can get help from someone or end up having to kill them. And depending on that choice, the people around you may react favorably to you or be terrified of you. In an early spot in the game, I chose to kill someone working for a baron. When I arrived at the baron's castle, he was aware that I had slaughtered his henchmen and decided to lock me out, forcing me to find another way in. Choices like this are presented to you regularly throughout the story, though few make a difference until you near the end of the game. In the third act, these choices carry much more gravity to them and can make a difference in which of the game's 3 endings you'll get. Getting to those endings, however, can be quite difficult if you're like me and you're easily distracted by side quests. My original Witcher 3 playthrough took me months to complete because I would pick up every quest I could find, do a couple, then get overwhelmed by how many I had to complete and put the game down for days or even weeks on end. This time on the Switch, I'm taking things much more casually and playing on easy mode, which dramatically reduces enemy HP and damage, meaning I don't need to grind out levels as much to get ahead in the story. I really love the inclusion of multiple difficulty settings, especially on a portable version of the game, because it makes it easier for me to play a little and just work my way through the main storyline without feeling like I need to invest dozens of hours to get anywhere. With just a handful of hours under my belt on the Switch version, I feel I've played enough to know what I'm getting into here. This is everything I love about The Witcher 3. Its storyline, the massive open world, the tons of quests and side activities and memorable characters crammed into the world's tiniest package. But to do that, some compromises were made along the way. That means I can't really call this the definitive version of The Witcher 3, and it certainly won't hold up when compared to other consoles or your TV, but it is the only way to play this game portably, and how good that feels can't be understated. Overall, I like the Switch version of The Witcher 3 a lot. It's yet another technical marvel on a system that's slowly becoming known for impossible ports and one of the best games of this decade. If you've never played The Witcher 3 and want to have it anywhere you go, I highly recommend this version. If you're only going to play docked, however, I'd point you to the PS4, Xbox, or PC versions instead for the best possible visual presentation. That about wraps it up for our review of Witcher 3 on the Nintendo Switch. Make sure to subscribe to GameXplain for more reviews just like this one. Ring that notification bell to be the first to know every time we upload a video, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.